Okay, guys, do you see what I'm sharing right now? Okay, so a pleasant afternoon, to everyone, and welcome to Algorithms and Complexity. So, our topic for this meeting, or our focus for this meeting, would be Introduction to Algorithm Design, where we would be discussing. So, just a brief discussion about introduction to algorithms, since it was already discussed on the overview of algorithms. Then, our focus for this meeting would be performance analysis of algorithms, where we would be using asymptotic notation, amortized analysis, then complexity classes. Then we would be proceeding with computing the runtime complexity of an algorithm, where we would have Python snippets and we would be getting its time complexity. So, just a brief overview of what an algorithm is. It's mainly a sequence of steps that should be followed in order to complete a given task or problem. So, if you have a problem, okay, so that algorithm would solve it and its output would be the solution to that problem. So it should have well-defined procedures that takes input data, processes it, and produces the desired output, so which is represented here. So given an input, your algorithm processes that input and provides an output, which is the target or which solves a particular problem. So, what are some important reasons for studying algorithms? You guys, as computer science students, you are required to take on data structures, then algorithms, mainly because it's essential for computer science and engineering. And you would notice it as we proceed with our discussions and topics. Uh, it is important in many other domains like biology, economics, ecology, communications, and more. Okay, so on. Ecology was repeated. They play a vital role in technology innovation. Okay, especially if you would be reading research, like for example now, with regards to artificial intelligence and more improvements with regards to artificial intelligence, you would see their discussion with regards to the algorithms that they are using. Okay, and also they improve problem solving and analytical thinking. Okay, so there are two aspects that are prime importance in solving a given problem. So just an overview, more overview. So we have two. So first, so we need an efficient mechanism to store, manage, and retrieve data, which is required to solve a problem. So that should be what was discussed during your data structures. And secondly, we require an efficient algorithm that is a finite set of instructions to solve a problem, which is our focus here on algorithms and complexity. Okay. So our goal is to have an efficient algorithm. So you could create a solution, a step-by-step solution to a particular problem, but is it the most efficient one? Okay. So like for example now, so let's say I would be traveling from my house to Yuma. So there are a lot of algorithms that I could use, or let's say if I would be implementing it in a particular map, okay, to find the best path from my home to Yuma. So what would be the most efficient from those? Okay. So thus, the study of the previous subject, which was data structures and algorithms, they go hand in hand. So an efficient algorithm should follow the following characteristics. So it should be as specific as possible. It should not be vague. It should directly ask for the input, process it, and give an output. So it should have each instruction properly defined. So it should be easily understood, but in truth, code and these algorithms are quite complex to understand unless you read the fine print of it. So there should not be any ambiguous instructions. Next, okay. All the instructions of the algorithm should be executable in a finite amount of time and a finite number of steps. So this is the goal. So finite number amount of time and number of steps. And also should have clear input and output to solve the problem, okay, which could be easily represented by pseudocode then code or through a flowchart and then code. So each instruction of the algorithm should be integral in solving the problem. So here, okay, Let's have an example of an algorithm. So here is one to complete a task in our daily lives. So like for example, preparing a cup of tea. So ang bibigay ko sana example dito is yung binangkal recipe, pero masyadong mahaba yun. So let's just have the most common ones to represent an algorithm, which is preparing a cup of tea. So this is how are the steps on how to prepare a cup of tea. So there are 7 steps. Okay. So in truth, there are other ways to prepare a cup of tea. Okay. So, but this one is provided, and this might be the one that the author deemed efficient. Okay. So as you would see, steps are clearly defined, and it solves the problem where the tea can be now be served. Okay. So as you would see here, the solution to a real world problem can be converted into an algorithm, which can then be developed into computer software using a programming language. So, as I've stated, it would be possible to have several solutions, or in that case, ways to prepare a cup of tea. So, it should be as efficient as possible when it's to be implemented using software. Okay. And given a problem, there may be more than one correct algorithm. Okay. So, which is what you would be learning here in our class. There are different ways to solve particular problems. And with the algorithms, we're going to choose which of these would be the best. Okay. So which uh, one that produces exactly the desired output for all valid input values. So that is always the goal. The cost of executing different algorithms may be different. So it may be measured in terms of time required to run the algorithm, so which is most common for those algorithms that you have learned during your data structures and on a computer system and memory space required for it. Okay, so it could be through time, could be through space. Okay, so there are two things that we should keep in mind while designing an efficient algorithm. So it should be correct and should produce the results as expected for all valid input values. So always the goal should have a correct output and should be optimal or efficient in the sense that it should be executed on the computer within desired time limit. So that's why finite amount of steps, finite time. Okay. So performance analysis of the algorithm. So this is our goal. So that's why our class is called Algorithms and Complexity. So it's very important for deciding the best solution for a given problem. Okay. So if the performance of an algorithm is within the desired time and space requirements, we deem it to be optimal. Okay. So one of the most common and popular methods is through analyzing its complexity. Okay. So later we would be discussing what does complexity mean. So and the analysis of algorithm helps us to define which one is most efficient in terms of time and space. So where you would be learning all about time and space complexity today. So proceeding to specific topic regarding performance analysis of algorithms. So the performance of an algorithm is measured by the size of its input data n. Okay, so this is we have n as the size of input data and the time and the memory space used by the algorithm. So the time required is measured by the key operations to be performed by the algorithm, such as comparison operations, your loops, okay, where key operations are instructions that take significant amount of time during execution. So that means if you would be printing, if you would have conditions, if you would have cases, you would have loops. So that consumes time. Okay. And you would be learning to compute complexity with particular codes later. So whereas the space requirement of an algorithm is measured by the memory needed to store the variables, constants, and instructions during the execution of the program. So since you've learned about data structures, you've learned about variables, okay, and their size in memory, so that is related to our space requirements. Okay, so it would be dependent on the input. Now let's proceed to time complexity. So as stated, the time complexity of the algorithm is the amount of time that an algorithm will take time to execute on a computer system to produce the output. Okay. So our aim with time complexity is to determine for a given problem and more than one algorithm, which one of the algorithms is most efficient with respect to the time required to execute. Okay. So that means we have a problem, we have multiple algorithms to solve that problem. Which one of them is most efficient? Okay. So most common uh, problems that we would be tackling about, which would be on the next topic, which is searching, sorting. So I think sorting algorithms were already discussed, and searching algorithms were already discussed during your data structures. So as for our class, we will be discussing the time complexity, okay, of each of these algorithms and what scenario would they be best used. Okay. The input size is measured as the number of items in the input. Okay. For example, the input size for a sorting algorithm. So by sorting, let's say uh, I have a list of students like you guys. So I could sort you by last name. So from A to Z. So that's sorting. So for example, the input size for a sorting algorithm will be the number of items in the input. So a sorting algorithm will have an increased runtime to sort a list of 5,000 than that of a list of input size 50. Like for us, so if you are to sort it manually, so if you are to sort only three persons or three numbers, it would be easier. And as it grows, therefore, it would be harder to sort, just like with computers. So that means if your computer would sort an input size of 50, it would be expected to be faster than sorting an input size of 5,000 and many more. Okay. So the runtime of an algorithm for a specific input depends on the key operations to be executed in the algorithm. Since these algorithms have different steps, so that means okay, their runtimes would be different as well. So for example, the key operation for a sorting algorithm is a comparison operation. Okay. So why do we need to compare when we are sorting? So let's say you would be sorting, okay, uh, cards, okay, that you have in your hand. Okay, so let's say you have five cards in your hand, and they are wanted to sort by from lowest to highest. So that means you could compare, okay, the first one to the second one. Okay, so which if you would be comparing the first one to the second one, that would be a key operation or a condition or mainly a comparison operation. So then let's say you could interchange and so on as you compare until you reach the last card. Okay. So ideally, this key operation should not depend upon the hardware, the operating system, or the programming language being used to implement the algorithm. So just like what we have now, hardware that we have in 2024 is so much faster. Okay. So also with the storage that we have, it's much bigger, faster than what we've had during the 90s, 80s, and more. So that's why the study of data structures and algorithms back then, okay, is more important. Was deemed more important. Okay, so because they have limited hardware, so limited memory, limited computing power, and so on. Okay, so now even as we have higher capacity for memory, more processing power, so the usage of algorithms are okay, somewhat if we are to look at the processing time, okay, so especially if we are to run an algorithm, it might have the same time of output, okay. But as it becomes more complex, as it has more inputs, okay, so it would be important for us to know, okay, efficient algorithms that we could use. Okay, so now let's continue. So a constant amount of time is required to execute each line of code. So don't forget this. So each line of code that you have, okay, is a constant amount of time. Okay. However, each line may take different amount of time to execute. So let's say if you would be printing, okay, so it would execute at that time. But if you now have conditions, if you would now have loops, so that would be different. So in order to understand the running time required for an algorithm, consider this example right here. Okay. So we have our code right here. We have 5 lines for our code, and each line is represented by C. Okay. So we have C1 or C, you could call it C sub 1 up to C5. Okay. So each line of code would be, okay, handled differently. So as you would see right here, may take a different amount of time to execute. It's like what we have here. So this is a condition. So it's still constant time. So would be executed upon, okay, if these conditions are met, and else, so executed at constant time again. And this one would be handled differently. So in our loop. So in the case that n would not be 0 or 3, therefore we should be executing this. And now our code, okay, or the code that we have, would have a different execution time or different complexity. So also the last line of code would be in constant time as well. Okay. So the time required by the algorithm depends on the time required for each statement and how many times a statement is executed. So we could look at it that way. We could process it this for each statement. But later, as we go on our discussion, you would notice that you would not be dealing with it like this, okay, which would be too specific. Okay. So the running time of an algorithm is the sum of time required by all statements. Okay. So for the example above, statement 1 takes C1 and 2 C2 as stated. So if the ith statement takes constant amount of time, so Ci, and if the ith statement is executed n times, it will take Ci n time. Okay, so that means would be repeated n times. So constant time would still remain constant. Okay. Next, the total running time of T of n of the algorithm for a given value. So assuming that n is not 0 or 3 will be, okay, if we assume that n would not be 0 or 3, which means this one. So first, execute if, so that's C1, okay, that's why we have C1 right here. Since n is not 0 or 3, we would be skipping our print statement right here and moving to else. So that's why it would be C1 plus C3. So do remember our definition right here. And if we are to compute it, it would look like this. So C1 plus C3. Then next, for I in range. And since this loops run for n times, okay, so or based on the range, okay, so therefore it shall be represented by C4 multiplied to n or C4n. Then print would be repeated multiple times as well. So it will be represented C5 times n. Okay. So this is its total running time if n is not equivalent to 0 or 3. So in the case that it is equivalent to 0 or 3, therefore the total running time would just be T of n is equal to C1 plus C2. Why is C1 not multiplied to n? Okay, mainly because these statements, okay, or lines of codes that we have are executed in constant time, or mainly only once. Okay. So any questions before we proceed? Okay, let's continue. So the running time required for an algorithm depends upon what input is given in addition to the size of the input given. So based on the input, whether if n is 0 or 3 or not 0 or 3. Okay. So this means that it would take longer to execute, or the complexity of this code would be much higher if n is not 0 or 3, mainly because we would have a loop right here. Later, you would be learning on how to represent this better. Okay. So for the given example, best case, okay, will be when the input is either 0 or 3. So now we have the term best case. We have best case, we have worst case. We also have average case, but average case we will be discussing that once we deal with the next topic. So now let's deal only with best case and worst case. So best case, that means it executes faster. Okay. Worst case would execute slower. Okay. So meaning, in our example here, it would be 0 or 3, it would just be constant time. Okay. C1 plus C2. Okay. While if for worst case, if n is not equal to 0 or 3, therefore, you would be okay, dealing with the first line of code, third line of code, which is an else. Then we have our for loop right here and our print, okay, under the for loop, which would be executed multiple times. Okay. So that is our worst case. So here the values of A and B are so we have here would be represented by AXN. Okay, so this is A times N plus B. Okay, so the values of A and B here are constants that depend on the statement costs, and the constant times are not considered in the final complexity. So what does that mean? If constant times are not considered in the final complexity, that means we would just be removing C1, C3, C4, and C5. And we will just be left by n. Okay. So in the worst case, the runtime required by an algorithm is a linear function of n. So by linear, that means it would depend on how many uh, or what it would be the range that we have right here, since it deals with range. So let's say it could be 0 to 10, 1 to 10. So that means it could be executed 10 times or lesser, okay, or more. Okay. So let's have an example here with linear search. Okay. Okay. Have you tackled linear search during your data structures? Thumbs up if yes, thumbs down if no. I think no. Okay. So let's continue. So with linear search, as you would see right here, so worst case running time of the algorithm is the upper bound complexity. Okay, so we have the term here upper bound, okay, which deals with the worst case running time. So maximum runtime required for an algorithm to execute any given input. So for the worst case runtime complexity, uh, it's very useful. Is that it guarantees for any input data, the runtime required will take more time as compared to the worst case runtime. Okay. So for example, in this linear search, so our arguments for our method, linear search, okay, so is the input list and the element. So in which what this does is for index value in, okay, enumerate, so a particular input list. So if value equals the element that we are searching for, we would now return its index. Okay, and return -1. Okay, so given an input list, let's say our list is 3, 4, 1, 6, 14, and since this is a search, so we would be searching for a particular element. Let's say our element is 4. Okay, so as you would see right here, index position for the element is x. So then Linear search, input list element, then 1. So what happens here? Okay. If you're to analyze the code that we have for our linear search, so we have a for loop right here. Okay. So we would have three lines of codes, which we could represent as C1, C2, and C3. Okay. So C1, okay. So this would be dependent. Okay. Since this is linear search, we start from okay our index starting at 0. Okay. Then moving to 1, moving to 2, moving to 3. So if you're to analyze this, it returns 1. So that means it moved from the first index, then the second index. That means, okay, so let me just have my notepad. Okay, so we have C1 plus C2 plus C3. Okay, so C1 would be repeated n times. I'll just use star, so to denote multiplication. C2 would be repeated n times as well, and C3 would be repeated n times. Okay, so this is how it would look like. So now, as stated, we could remove constant times that we have C1, C2, and C3. Okay, so therefore, our complexity would just be n plus n plus n. Okay, and later you would know how to represent it better. Okay, sorry, I think it was small. And so it would look like this first. C1 times n plus C2 times n plus C3 times n. So what would be n here? So n would be dependent on okay, the element that we are required to search. Okay. So let's say if the element here to be searched is not in our list. Okay. What happens? It is goes or traverses all of the items in or all of the elements in our list. So which is what would look like the worst case. Okay. So the best case would be if the element that we are searching for is the one that is in index 0. Okay, so let's continue. So in this case, the running time required will linearly depend upon the length of the list. So just like what we have here, length of the list. So if you are to search for 14, okay, element with a value of 14, so index position is should be 4. So I would expect here 4, where it would run through all the elements. Okay, so I'm still connecting, but that would be fine. So I would expect that output here is 4. So it traverses all the elements in our list. Okay, so continuing. We also have what we call as average case running time. So average running time required for an algorithm to execute. So it shall be n. So we have here, if we compute the average running time, average over running time of all possible input values. So in our case right here, since we have 5 elements, so we could traverse it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So just like what is represented here. So probabilistic analysis is used to analyze the average case running time, but this would not be our focus. We just have an example here. So which is computed by averaging the cost over the distribution of all possible inputs. So this would be harder to uh, compute, especially if you would have a lot of inputs. So for example, in our linear search, the number of comparisons at all positions would be 1. Okay, if the element to be searched was found at the 0th index. That means if you were to search for element 3, okay, so which was found at the 0th index, that means our cost would just be 1. Okay, so continuing. So, and similarly, the number of comparisons would be 2, 3, and so on and so forth. Okay, So thus, the average case running time will be as follows. Okay. So what would be our average case running time here? So if we have five, okay, then so five elements in our list, then we have n, okay, so which could be equivalent to five as well. Okay, but it would be represented like this. So it would be 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 divided by n. So it would be like that. Okay. So continuing, best case running time is the minimum time needed for an algorithm to run. So it's lower bound on the running time required for the algorithm. So if the input data is organized in such a way that it takes minimum running time to execute the given algorithm. Again, our best case here is again, if what we would be searching is the one at the zero index. Okay. So I think most of you are still not familiar with, okay, the syntax in Python, but some of you are already are. So we have here a method which is named linear search. We have arguments for or inputs required for linear search, which is a list. Okay, so a list looks like an array like this. Okay, so then another argument would be element. So element would be uh, a value of a particular element in that list. Okay, so then for index, so this is for loop. So for index value and enumerate input list. So this enumerates the input list. So and if the value would be equivalent to the given element, you would now be returning its index. Okay. So index and value are mainly exists in a particular list. Okay. So let's continue. So now let's proceed to the next notebook. So I've separated this one into multiple notebooks, mainly because if I would be printing them, so sometimes if the notebook is longer, so some cells are not included. Okay, next part. Okay. So before we proceed to time complexity, let's have a short discussion of what space complexity is. So space complexity estimates the memory requirement to execute it on a computer to produce the output as a function of input data. So the memory space requirement of an algorithm is one of the criteria used to decide how efficient it is. So if you would be executing an algorithm on a computer system, storage of the input is required, along with intermediate and temporary data and data structures, which are stored on the memory of the computer. So it would be dependent on the variables that you would be using and also the data structures that you would be using. So in order to write a programming solution for any problem, some memory would be required specifically for storing variables, program instructions, and executing the program on the computer. So as for space complexity of an algorithm, it is the amount of memory required for executing and producing the intended result. So for computing space complexity, let's have an example right here. Okay. So in which, given a list of integer values, the function returns the square value of the corresponding integer number. Okay. So let's look at our code right here. So as for our code, the algorithm will require allocating memory for the number of our items in the input list. Okay. So that means, okay, depending on the list that we are given right here, so it would allocate memory on how many elements do we have in our input list. Okay. And also, what would be the type of each element in our input list, whether it would be an integer or a float. Okay. So let's say that the number of elements in the input is n, then the space requirement increases with the input size. Therefore, the space complexity of an algorithm would be considered as O of n. So I think it was shown earlier here, but we would be discussing what O of n means. So it's big O notation. So O of n, which means it would be dependent on the number of elements, okay, in our list. Okay. So whether it would you would have n. So in this case, we have four elements, O of four. So it could be O of one, or if there are 1,000 elements, O of 1,000. But it would be represented as O of n. Okay. So if you're given two algorithms to solve a problem now, okay, so let's say this is just one algorithm, or what we had previously, linear search. Since there are other searching algorithms, you could now have more algorithms existing. Okay. So if then intended to solve a problem, with all other requirements being equal, then the algorithm that requires less memory can be considered more efficient than the other. Okay. So, or if, if it requires less time to execute, therefore, it would be more efficient. So, for example, suppose there are two searching algorithms. One has O of n in its in its space complexity, and one has O n log n. Okay. Later, we will be comparing both. So, this is linear. This is logarithmic. So, and linear would be deemed faster, okay, or more efficient than the O n log n. The first algorithm is the better algorithm as compared to the second with respect to space requirements. So space complexity analysis is important to understand the efficiency of an algorithm, especially for applications where memory space requirement is high. So especially for what would be these devices that have limited memory. So let's say IoT devices, okay, or those legacy devices that have very limited memory than what we have now. So when the input size becomes large enough, the order of growth also becomes important. So that's why it could look like this, O n log n, and many more. So in such situation, what we would be now be studying is what would be known as asymptotic efficiency of algorithms. And algorithms that are asymptotically efficient, they are considered to be better for algorithms with large inputs. So where our study now would proceed to asymptotic notation. Okay, so as you would see here, we have some notations. Okay, so that's why I gave you uh, an insight that we would be having some mathematics here for our discussion. So to analyze time complexity of an algorithm, the rate of growth, also known as order of growth, would be very important when the input size is large. Okay, so if the input size becomes large, we only consider higher order terms and ignore the insignificant terms. In which what this that is what we have done when we eliminated, okay, our constants. Okay. And since we have n right here, which could be easily, okay, represented as just as O of n if we are using big O notation. Okay. So continuing. In asymptotic analysis, we analyze the efficiency of the algorithms for large input sizes, considering the higher order of growth and ignoring multiplicative constants and lower order terms. Okay. So later I will be discussing lower order terms. What I have done previously on the notepad is just multiplicative constants. So we compare two algorithms with respect to the input size rather than actual runtime and measure how the time taken increases with an increased input size. So the algorithm, which is more efficient asymptotically, is generally considered a better algorithm as compared to other algorithms. So earlier you have seen linear search, okay, which performs O of n, okay. So later, or on the next meeting, we would be dealing with other searching algorithms with different runtimes, okay, or with a different time complexity. So the following asymptotic notations are commonly used to calculate the runtime complexity of an algorithm. We have, this is theta notation. So denotes worst case runtime complexity with a tight bound. Okay. So includes lower bound. Okay. So in which what we would be commonly using, okay, would be the big O notation or O notation, where denotes worst case runtime complexity with an upper bound. So which is our target, which ensures that the function never grows faster than the upper bound. So usually our focus with big O notation is the worst case runtime. Okay. Next, we have omega notation, so which denotes the lower bound of the algorithm's running time. So which is measures the best amount of time to execute the algorithm or the best case. Okay. So now let's proceed first to data notation. So the following function characterizes worst case runtime for the first example discussed in in our time complexity section. So which is T of n. So let's go back. So just to show you what was that. So we have our code right here. So our worst case, okay, runtime is when n is not 0 or n is not 3, where we have to deal with the first line of code, then C3, C4, and C5, as you would see right here. So uh, T of n, okay, is equivalent to C1, first line of code, C3 multiplied by n plus C5 multiplied by n. Okay, so as you would see. So this one is shorter. Okay, let me check. Hmm, okay, so here for a large input size, the worst case running time will be theta of n. Okay, so if you are to use theta notation, we usually consider one algorithm to be more efficient than the other if the worst case running time has a lower order of growth. Okay, so this is called linear time. Due to constant factors and lower order terms, an algorithm, lower order terms, an algorithm whose running time has higher order of growth might take less time for small inputs than an algorithm whose running time has lower order of growth. So, which means for theta notation, our focus is not if n is 0 or n equals 3. So, since our focus would be the worst case, okay, runtime for this one. So, which is if n is not 0 or n is not 3. Okay. Uh, for example, once the input size n becomes large enough, let's say the merge sort now. Okay. So which performs divide and conquer. That's why it's merge sort. You would be dealing with this on the next topic. It performs better as compared to insertion sort with worst case running time of O log n and O n squared respectively. Okay. So in which this should be n squared. I think I need to have to change O n squared. Okay. So logarithmic time is considered better than okay, uh, O n squared. So in which theta notation denotes worst case running time with a tight bound and can be represented by this one right here. For a given function f of n, the asymptotic worst case running time complexity can be defined as follows, from which we have t of n, then theta f of n. If and only if there exists, so let me just read through this one. So which would be better than me reading this. So the function t of n belongs to a set of functions theta f of n if there exist positive constants c1 and c2 such that the value of t of n always lie So T of n always lie between C1 f of n and C2 f of n. Okay. For all large values of n, and the condition is always true, when we say f of n is asymptotically type bound for T of n. Or you could say that T of n is greater than C1 f of n and is less than C2 f of n. Okay. So in which we have here figure 2, which shows the graphical example of theta notation, which could be observed, okay, where T of n always lie between C of n and C2 f of n. Okay, there. Okay, so this is theta notation. So as you would see, it lies between C1 and f of n and C2 f of n. Okay, continuing. So let's consider an example, okay, of what should be worst case runtime complexity with a formal definition of theta notation. So let's say we have f of n is equal to n squared plus n would just be, this should be not n sub 2. This should be n squared. Okay. So this should be theta n squared. Okay. So in which, okay, we would be eliminating n right here and should just be theta n squared. So in order to determine the time complexity with the theta notation definition, so we have to first identify constant C1 and C2 and 0 such that, okay, so it would be dependent on how you would be identifying constant C1 and C2 and N0. Usually, since it would be expected that T of n, okay, is greater than C1 and n, C1 f of n and lesser than C2 f of n, C1 should be always less than C2. Okay. So here, if you're given, okay, uh, this function right here, okay, so therefore we could divide it by n squared, which will produce. So this is not n2, should be n squared because given here we have n squared plus n, okay, as our t of n or f of n in this case. So why do we need to divide it by n squared? So just to show, mainly to simplify that we could have n right here. So if we divide it by n squared over n squared would be 1. Okay, n over n squared would just be 1 over n squared here would be removed, c2 would be removed. Okay, so it would look like this. And from here, you could easily choose what would be the value for constant 1, then n, and constant 2. So let's say if you would be choosing 1 for C1, 2 for C2, and N0, 1, so we would have 1 is less than or equal 1 plus 1 over n, and n is 1. So 1 plus 1 would be 2, and would be less than or equal C2, which would be 2, which suffices. Okay, so okay, so function or our theta notation. Okay, so which would then give. So it could now be represented. So if let's say if we would be removing constants, so it could also be represented as n squared less than or equal n squared plus n and less than or equal to n squared. Okay. So in which, as you would see, we do not need to show that C1 is 1 right here and n is 1. So which would be represented like this. Okay. Which would give us f of n is equal to O, sorry, not O, theta g of n. So which means that f of n is just theta n squared. Okay. So in which we eliminate plus n right here and we just focus on n squared right here. Okay. So if you're now to consider our next example for asymptotically type bound function, so let's say we have f of n equals n squared over 2 plus n over 2. So initially we have this. Okay. Now each n is divided by 2. Okay. Don't worry, guys. These are just examples. As I've stated, we would be focusing more on big O notation rather than theta notation, since that is most used to show the time complexity of algorithms rather than theta notation. Okay, but just to show you that on how we could interpret or show the theta notation given a function. Okay. So in order to identify C1 and C2 and N0, so we could have again, so we have, let's say, since we have n squared right here, so therefore we could have C1 n squared, okay, then C2 times n squared. So then we have n squared over 2. Okay. So now you could choose constants to satisfy the condition. So in this case, C1 should always be lower than C2. So as for N0, 1 is chosen again. So let's say C1 is 1/5. Okay. So C2 is 1. Okay. So which just so shows n squared and N0 would just be 1. So that's why n squared over 2 and plus n over 2 still remains. Okay. So therefore, if you are to look for the theta notation of n squared over 2 plus n over 2, we just remove n over 2 and n squared over 2. If you are to analyze this, it's just 1 half times n squared. We remove 1 half and n squared remains. Therefore, we have theta n squared. So with C1 as 1/5, C2 as 1, and N0 is 1. So for the following would be true. F of n, given our function earlier, which should be n squared over 2 plus n over 2, is just theta n squared. Or to simplify it without using this part right here, or without showing conditions, what would be representative of this function, f of n, is just theta n squared. Okay, so remove lower order terms, remove constants, okay, or we could remove 1 half and just remain with n squared, which would be theta n squared. So as with theta notation, again, it provides a tight bound for time complexity of an algorithm. So which should be between so C1 and C2. Okay. Now let's move to what we would be using all throughout our class, which is the big O notation. So as what we have seen, theta notation is worst case, including upper and lower bounds or tight bound, whereas big O notation characterizes worst case time complexity, focusing only on the upper bound of the function. Okay. So, which, if we are to check, what would be the upper bound right here? Upper bound would just be this part, or for it to be clearer, this part only, C2f of n. Okay. So that is the upper bound. Going back, so we only care what happens at higher values of n. Okay. And the variable n0 represents the threshold between which rate of growth would be important. Oh, it's not important. So as you would see, based on our plot right here, which is a graphical representation of t of n with varying value of n. So we can see that, for example, if t of n is equal to n squared, this should be n squared. I'll be changing that once I give this reference to you. N squared plus 500, so we could eliminate 500 right here and just be left with n squared. So let's say with C2 equals 2 and N0 being approximately 23. Okay. So as you would see, we have T of n right here. Theta notation. Okay. Sorry, that should be for O notation. Okay. Okay. So in O notation or O f of n, okay, so it's a really set of a functions that includes all functions with same or smaller rates of growth than f of n. Okay. For example, O(n) squared also includes O(n) and O log n and so on. Okay. So that means O(n) squared could just be O(n) squared plus O of n plus O log n, but would just be represented by O(n) squared. So, however, big O notation should characterize a function closely as possible. For example, it is true that the function f of n, okay, so this is 2n cubed, 2n squared plus 5, okay, is O of n to the fourth. However, it's more accurate as O(n) cubed. Okay, so I apologize if I have not specifically shown here that it should be O(n) to the fourth or O(n) cubed. Okay, okay. So here we have the most common growth rates from lowest to highest. And this is what you should remember. Actually, there are a lot more. Okay. So first, we have constant time or O of 1. So let's say a print. Okay. A simple print is O of 1. Okay. We also have logarithmic time, O log n. Okay. We also have linear time. Okay. Usually our for loops or linear time. Our while loops that increments and decrements by 1, let's say, is considered logarithmic time. We also have linear logarithmic if you have a combination of a for loop and a while loop. So that's linear logarithmic. We also have quadratic time. Later, I'll be giving examples of quadratic time, cubic time, and you could also have exponential time. Okay. So continuing. So using big O notation, the running time of an algorithm can be computed by analyzing the structure of the algorithm. That means analyzing the code line by line, just like what we did on our first example. For example, we have here a double nested loop. So let me zoom in. So we have here a double nested loop in our algorithm. So what would be is its worst case running time. So as shown here, it should be O(n) squared. So I'll be fixing these errors right like this. Since the values of I and j will be at most n, and both the loops will run n squared times as shown in the example code. Okay. So let me show you how this was computed. Okay. Okay. So let's say we have here 3 lines of codes. Okay. So we have four. So we have sorry, C1n times n. So what happens is since we have to okay. So for it to be faster, to be represented faster, so it would look like this: n times n uh, times c. Okay. So this means this would be repeated multiple times. Okay, and would be dependent on this would be repeated multiple times depending on how many times n here would be repeated, and c here would be repeated on how many times this two would be repeated. Okay. So it would be represented like this. C1 uh, times n times C2 times n times C3. Okay. So it could look like this. Okay. So, or for it to be simpler, it could look like this. Then, since we have n times n, so n times n is n squared. Okay. And we could remove c. So that's why we have O n squared. Okay, so this represents that uh it's O(n) squared since this is just notepad. Okay, so that is how this line of code, okay, how we could compute the time complexity or the worst case running time for two for loops. So let's have some examples right here. I think solutions are already shown. Let me just have them hidden. Okay, so there would be some suspense. So let's look at some examples on how we could compute or how to get the upper bound or the big O notation. So given a function. Okay. So let's say first one, or how do we get the big O notation? So let's say we have find the upper bound for the function t of n equals to n plus 7. Okay. Okay. So as we are requested with the upper bound, okay, if you're given a problem like this, so if you're asked to find the upper bound, so that means you do have to find, uh, since there are no constants, no problem. So this will just will uh, just be for upper bound, we do have to go back to our example right here. So upper bound has to deal with this part. So T of n should be less than or equal C2, or in this case, C, f of n. Okay. So I'll show the solution right here. So it would be understood clearly. Okay. So if you are asked to look for the upper bound of the function, so using O notation, that shall be T of n greater than or equal C times f of n. Okay. So this is 2n plus 7. Okay. Less than or equal C times n. So this condition would hold true. Okay. For all values, so what you could do here is, an example would be, okay, let me just remove this. So T of n is 2n plus 7. Okay. Okay. So would be less than or equal. So in this case, we'll use equal C. Okay. This should be Cn. Okay. Cn. Okay. Uh, okay. So how can we get the value for first? What would be best to get the value for C, okay, or n? So how do we obtain 7 right here and 3? Okay. Hmm. So as stated here, it holds true for all values that for n would be greater than 7. So that shall be greater than or equal to 7. And C would be equivalent to 3. So let's say if you have 3 right here and 7, okay, so n would be, we have 7. So let's say we have 2 times 7 plus 7 and 3 times 7. Okay, so that shall be 21 for both. Okay, so let me just have this 2n again. And we have here C. Okay, so n. So to get the value of C, we just divide our equation by n. Okay, so hmm, tama naman. Okay. So let's say we divide 2n by n, okay, plus 7. Actually, it's just 2n by n. C, tama naman. C is 3. Okay. Tama. C minus 7. Okay. Tama nga ba? Okay. Hmm. Also works like that. Pero, sige. Okay. Let's continue. Sige. So, if we are to assign values C, 3 for C and 7 for N, so it would hold true for that. Okay. So, and it would be considered O of N. So having 2n plus 7 as our T of n. So how did it become O of n? So we eliminate 7 right here and we remove 2. And for big O notation, it's just O of n. Next, find f of n for functions T of n equals 2n plus 5 such that T of n is O of n. So what we could have here, we could assign a value of for n, which is 5. Okay. And we could assign a value of so we still have to do like it like this, see, since we are to look for the upper bound. So in this case it would hold true for n would be greater than or equal to 5, and for c, okay, it would be 3 again. Okay, so looking at our solution, okay, so we have t of n again. Okay. Okay, so I was using so sige, let's continue. So okay, so it would hold true for 3 again. So it shall be 2n plus 5 is less than or equal 3 of n. Okay. So as you would see, if we assign 5 at n, so it would just be 3 times 5, 15, 2 times 5 plus 5, that shall be 15 again. So condition true for c equals 3 and 0 equals 5, and 2n plus 5 is just less than or equal O of n, or its time to complexity would be O of n. And f of n would just be represented by n. Okay, so let's continue. So next, find f of n for the function t of n equals n squared plus n, such that, okay, already shown the solution, such that T of n equals O f of n. So if T of n is equal to O f of n, so it would just be, so n squared plus n should be less than or equal to 2n squared for all n, which is just 1, with c equals 2. So mainly because if we don't assign c as 2, so or if we assign, let's say 1, okay, to c, so it would be lower than n squared plus n, because n squared plus n would be equivalent to 2 always. Okay, so we could actually assign constant here, c2 equals 2 and 0 equals 1. That would be fine as well. Okay, so hmm, So as you would see, for all n squared greater than or equal to 1. So let's continue. So we have a n squared plus n is just could be represented by O n squared. And f of n would just be n squared. So since this would be our focus. So again, if you would be representing it using big O notation, if you have, let's say, n squared plus n, so you just remove a linear time right here, which is n, and our focus would be a squared, n squared, which is yeah, quadratic time. Now let's move to number 4. Prove that f of n equals to n cubed minus 6n is not equal to O n squared. So this is could be easily answered. So again, looking at what we have here, so to make it quicker, we just remove minus 6n and 2, and this shall be OF is n cubed, or our uh, time complexity or big O notation, given this function f of n, would be O n cubed, which is not equivalent to O n squared. Okay, so that shall be O n squared. And lastly, we have proved that 20n squared plus 2n plus 5 is O n squared. So if you would look, okay, higher order functions. So f of n here would just be n squared. So having removed 2n, having removed 5, and having removed 20, so it should be O n squared. Okay, so the complexity here should be O n squared. Okay. So big O notation provides an upper bound for our function, ensuring that the function never grows faster than the upper bounded function. Okay. So by upper bound, so we look at it like having a constant right here. So given a function, t of n, so it should be lower or equal than our upper bound. Okay. So continuing. The next notation that we have is omega notation. So as for omega notation, okay, uh, it describes an asymptotic lower bound on algorithms. Okay, so similar to big O notation, describing an upper bound. So that means having our theta notation earlier. So this is the part where we have C1 f of n. Okay, which should be lesser or C1 f of n should be lesser or equal than our function t of n. So omega notation computes best case runtime complexity of the algorithm. So and theta notation, f of n is omega notation. Omega notation is pronounced as omega f of n. So this one right here. So in which such a way that there are positive constants n0 and c, so they are always positive, such that for all values of n greater than n0, t of n always lies on or above the function c f of n, where we have t of n is equal to omega f of n. If and only if, so n0 and c are present, then you can have our c f of n should be less than t of n. Again, for all n greater than or equal n0. So here we have the graphical notation for omega notation. So as you would see, we have our omega notation. So always lies above c f of n. Okay, since it's best case. So now, if the running time of an algorithm is omega f of n, it means the running time of the algorithm is at least a constant multiplier of f of n for sufficiently large values of input size n, and the omega notation gives a lower bound on the best case running time complexity of a given algorithm. So, and it means that the running time of a given algorithm will be at least f of n without depending upon the input. And in order to understand omega notation and how to compute the lower bound on the best case complexity of the algorithm, let's have these examples right here. Okay, let me hide the solutions again. We only have three examples. Okay, so let's say find f of n for the function t of n to n squared plus t such that t of n, okay, is equal to omega of n. Okay, okay. So for this one, okay, so since we have earlier, let me just show the solution. So to show that we are computing for, we have uh, the lower bound, Cf of n, less than t of n, less than or equal t of n. So in which we would be assigning values. So typically, n would always be greater than 0. Okay, so positive values, and c would always be a positive value as well. So let's say n would be greater than 0, n is 1. Okay, so we have 2n squared plus 3. So we have cn squared, cf of n, f of n is considered n squared right here. Okay, so if c is 1 and we just have n squared, so if n is 1, so we just have 1 right here, 2 times 1 plus 3 plus 5, which would be greater than cn squared. So it holds true. So now, if you are to look for f of n, so it would be n squared. And what would be omega of n? Same thing as what we did with uh, big O notation. We eliminate constants. Okay, so we eliminate 2 and 3. So therefore, we have n squareds. Okay, so omega n squared. So next, find the lower bound for t, 3n squared. So n is always greater than or equal to 0. So we could assign n as 1. So our solution, again, c f of n less than or equal t of n. So we consider 0, then 3 cn squared, 3n squared. Okay, so based on the lower bound right here, so even if n would be 1, equivalent to 1, so and let's say c would be equivalent to 2, so c could have a lower value as well. Okay, as long as it's greater than 0, we could even assign c with 1. But in this case, having assigned c with 2, that's 2 times 1, that should be 2, and it's still lower than 3, so that means we have checked. Okay, that means we have sufficed that our lower bound right here. So next, okay, so what would be our theta notation? First, if you're to look for f of n, so f of n would just be n squared again, since we have 3n squared. So to get the omega notation, so it's just 3n squared, we eliminate 3, and omega n squared. Okay. Lastly, we have proved that 3 of n is omega n of n. So by quickly analyzing this, so it's just, we could remove 3 right here. So, and it would be represented as omega n. Okay. So, or you could perform again, okay, using the omega notation and using the condition for the lower bound. So we could use this condition. Okay. We could have c equals 1. You could even have c equals 2. Okay. Let's say c is 1, or our constant would be 1. So that shall be 1, okay, less than or equal 3. Okay. So having, so this should not be squared. So it's just be c of n, then 3 of n, since we don't have any squared right here. So therefore, 3 of n is just omega n. 3n is just omega n. And we are, if you are to get f of n, it's mainly just omega. Sorry, n. Okay. So any questions before we continue? Questions, guys? None. Okay. So now let's remove to amortized analysis, then moving forward to the last part of our discussion. Okay. So in amortized analysis of an algorithm, we average the time required to execute a sequence of operations with all the operations of the algorithm. So that means just like what we have done with the first example that we have. So amortized analysis is important when we are not interested in the time complexity of individual operations, but we are interested in the average runtime of sequence of operations. So given an algorithm, each operation requires different amount of time to execute, so which we have seen on the first example. And certain operations require significant amount of time and resources, while some operations are not costly at all. Okay, so assignment operations are not costly. Okay, but now if you have conditions, loops, those operations will be costly. So in amortized analysis, we analyze algorithms considering both costly and less costly operations in order to analyze all sequence of operations. So amortized analysis is the average performance of each operation in the worst case, considering the cost of the complete sequence of operations. So it's different from average case analysis since distribution of the input is not considered. So there are three commonly used methods for amortized analysis, whether it would be aggregate analysis. Let me just fix that. We have aggregate analysis. So this is just a definition. The amortized cost is the average cost of all sequence of operations for a given sequence of n operations. The amortized cost of each operation can be computed by dividing the upper bound on the total cost of n operations with n. We also have the counting method. So we assign an amortized cost to each operation, which may be different than their actual cost. We impose an extra charge on early operations in the sequence and save credit cost, which is used to pay expensive operations later in the sequence. And lastly, we have potential method. So where we determine the amortized cost of each operation and impose an extra charge to early operations that may be used later. And unlike accounting method, the potential method accumulates the overcharge credit as potential energy of the data structure as a whole instead of storing credit for individual operations. As for this three, we would not be using them since our focus would be for this part right here, composing complexity analysis. So it just shows that there is another way to compute, okay? So, or another way to compute the average performance, which is through amortized analysis. So let's move to composing complexity classes. So normally we need to define the total running time of complex operations of algorithms. So where we can combine the complexity classes of simple operations to find the complex class of more complex combined operations. So our goal is to analyze the combined statements in a function or method to understand the total time complexity of executing several operations. Initially, what we did is each line of code, okay, just like what we have here. So we gave it a cost. So with composing complexity classes, we would now be grouping them. Simplest way is to combine two complexity classes, is to add them. This occurs when we have two sequential operations. So let's look at our example. For example, if we have two operations of inserting an element to a list and then sorting that list. So a list, again, is just like an array. So in a list in Python, it's just like an array. You could insert a list and you do have an option to sort that list as well. If you would be using a function to sort that list. So assuming that inserting an item occurs O n time. Okay. Okay. So depending on the number of elements you would be inserting on that list. And sorting an item, depending on the method that was used, okay, is O n log time. Then we can write the total complexity as O of n plus n log n. That is, we bring the two functions inside O as per big O computation. So now we consider only the highest order term, in which we have O n log n, just like what we did earlier. Our focus is to eliminate lower order terms and focus on the higher order term. So if we repeat an operation, for example, in a while loop, then we multiply the complexity class by the number of times the operation will be carried out. So if an operation is O f of n and is repeated O n times, then we multiply two complexities, O f of n times O of n, so where it would be O n f of n. Okay, so that's why it became O n log n. Okay. So for example, we have the function f of n uh, has time complexity of O n squared and is executed n times in a for loop. So just like this one. So let's say we have a for loop right here, another for loop. So the time loop complexity for the above code. So let's say now we have O of n squared multiplied by O of n. Okay. So where it would now be, okay. So O n cubed. Okay. So here we are multiplying time complexity for inner functions by the number of times this function executes. Okay. And the runtime of a loop is at most the runtime of statements inside the loop multiplied by the number of iterations. So for example, in a single nested loop, that is one loop nested in another loop like this. Okay. So this will run n squared times. Okay. Mainly because, okay, so this is what I was showing to you earlier. Okay. Like this one right here. Okay. So, and this is what I was showing to you earlier. Okay. Where for each execution of the statements, it takes constant time of one. Okay. Each one is O of one. Okay. Then executed n times, which we can express the running time as follows. So we have constant time multiplied by n times n, where this would be executed n times. Under, this would be executed n times. We multiply them, where it becomes c times n squared. And again, to represent big O, our focus is the higher order terms. We retain n squared and remove c. So that's why it's O n squared. Okay. So continuing. For consecutive statements within nested loops, we add time complexities of each statement and multiply by the number of times the statement is executed, as for this example right here. So let's say we have, for this one, if we are to analyze this, we have a function. Okay. So where input is n, our argument is n. So this one occurs O of n. So what we do now is we group, okay, so our code. So this execute n times, and we would consider this part as constant 1 or C1. So C1 would be multiplied n times right here. Next is we have n right here, okay, multiplied by n and multiplied by C2, where C2 would be multiplied n squared times. Okay. So then we add them now. So we just add them because so this two for loops, this for loop right here and this nested loop is separate to each other. Okay. So we add them. And since our focus again is higher order terms, so this would appear just as n plus n squared if we remove constants C1 and C2, and our focus is higher order terms, we eliminate n, and to represent big O notation, it's just O n squared. Okay. So since with big O, our focus is on the upper bound or the worst case runtime. So next, we can define base 2 logarithmic complexity. Okay. So like what I've said, the while loop. typically is logarithmic time. Reducing the size of the problem by half in constant time. Okay. So for example, let's look at this following code. So where while I is less than or equal to n, okay, then we have multiply I by 2. So that means we start at 2. So we start at 1. So let's say n is 20. Okay. So we start at 1. Sorry, since we multiply I times 2 first, so we start at 2, printing it, then multiplied by 2, 2 times 2, 4, 4 times 2, 8, 8 times 2, 16, and 16 times 2, that would be higher than 20, so therefore we stop. Okay, so, okay, let's continue. So for example, if you run this code with n equals 10, so if n is 10, so while I is less than or equal to 10, so let's say we start with 1, we print 2, okay, so I is now 2, 4, we print 4, I is 8, we print 8, and since I is still 8, we could print 16, and since I is now 16, so we stop there. So we print 2, 4, 8, 16. So if we double n, we see it prints out 5 numbers. Okay, so if now it becomes 20, we will be able to print up to 32. So with each subsequent doubling n, the number of iterations is only increased by 1. So we assume that the loop has k iterations, then the value of n will be 2n right here, which we could write it as follows. So it's mainly logarithm of n, okay? So which is, in this case, 2 to the k, depending on k as I, okay? So which this could be further simplified as k log 2 and 2. So log 2, 2 right here, depending on the value log this one k log 2 is equal to log 2, okay, and k is just equivalent to the logarithm of n, okay. So where we could state that the worst case running time for the above code that we have, typically if it's a while loop, so unless we multiply I right here with I, so it would just be o log n, okay. So even if we just have iterations right here, in this case multiplication, okay, through iteration. So its uh, its time complexity will just be O log n. Okay, so let's continue. So now let's proceed to computing the runtime of complexity of algorithms given a snippet of code. So just like what was provided here. So as with this one, so some of which are uh, combinations of loops, but let's look at the examples that we have here. And I'll hide the solutions first since I printed it. So that's why solutions are already shown. Okay. So do remember if you would be getting the uh, complexity of, in this case, algorithms or snippets of code. Okay. So your focus would be on higher order terms. Okay. So to analyze an algorithm with respect to the best, worst, and average case runtime algorithm, it is not always possible to compute this for every given function or algorithm. So, however, it is always important to know the upper bound worst case runtime complexity. Okay, so which is our focus on the big O notation. Okay, so continuing, uh, first, let's find the worst case runtime complexity of this Python snippet. Okay, so we have for I in range n, we print data. So this could be represented with for I in range n would be n, and print data here would be represented by C. That means we have C times N, okay? And we could remove C. That means runtime complexity for this snippet of code is just O of n, as shown here. So again, we have T of n. So we have constant time, C right here. So multiplied by how many times it would be printed, C times n. We remove C, lower order terms. Our focus is on n. So this would be f of n is n, and we have our time complexity as O of n. Next, let's look for another example. So find the time complexity of the following snippet. So now we have here two for loops or a nested loop. So print run would run in constant time. For j in range, n would be looped n times depending on the first for loop, which is another n times. So it would be represented by n times c. So n times n would be n squared. So our expected answer here would be O of n squared. There. So again, so this would look like this. So it would be n times n times c. So, or it could be c times n. So same. So it would be n squared there times c. So then we could now represent it as big O of n squared. So that is our time complexity for this snippet of code. Next, let's look for our another example. So this time, we do have a nested loop, but we have another statement which is a break. So what does a break here do? So the break here stops the for loop that we have right here. So always stops the for loop, the next for loop. Okay. So that means this would run n times. Okay. So as for this one, this would run constant type again. Because after printing run fun, it would stop, it would break the loop, returning to our first loop. So therefore, it would just be O of n. So as shown here, because of the break right here. So that means this group would just be running on constant time. Or if we could represent this would just be n times c and would now be just O of n. Okay, continuing. So now let's look at another snippet and identify its uh, um, time complexity. So we have a function. So as for a function, we need to disregard its the definition of the function. Please do note that there should be a tab right here. So since I just added it like this, so there should be a tab. Okay, so that means it's part of the function fun. Okay, so our input would be n. So for our first for loop, so we have constant time right here. So this is c times n. So let's have our computation for the next one. So that should be c times n, or let's have their c1 times n plus. So we have here plus mainly because the next loops right here are separate from our first for loop. So we have another constant right here, c2, which would be repeated n times and another n times. So since this would be a nested loop. Okay. So like for example, if we have for I in range n, so let's say for I in range 10 as well. So for the first I, let's say it would be 1. If j in range 10 here would be repeated 10 times. If I now becomes 2, would be repeated another 10 times, and so on. So therefore, we have C2 times n right here. So C2 times n, which should be C1 times n plus C2 times n squared. Okay, so our focus here is to remove lower order terms. So it would just be n plus n squared. Okay, and removing lower order terms, our focus only is on the higher order terms, which is n squared. Therefore, the runtime complexity for number 4 is O n squared. Okay, so there. Uh, Now, let's move to number 5. Number 5, find the time complexity of the Python snippet. So as you would see here, we have a condition. Okay, so our focus again is on higher order terms that we have. So first, we have, so if n is 0, print data. So that would just be, you could represent it as C1, okay, n, so C1 times n, so plus, okay. So our focus is on this part right here, okay. So in which for I in range n, print structure. So print structure, which is another constant, will be multiplied. Sorry, sorry, this shall not be multiplied n times, since if n equals 0, print data, so that's just constant time, okay, or would be considered O of 1. So just for clarification, so if f of n equals 0, print data, so it would just be constant time. Okay, so else C2 print structure multiplied n times. Okay, so therefore we would be focusing on C2 n, and we would be removing lower order terms, which is our constant. So therefore it would just be O of n. Okay, so as you would see right there, so this is how it was computed. Okay, and lastly, okay, no, we have two items remaining. The last one would be the hardest one. Find the time complexity for the snippet. So if you are to check each code right here, so this is constant time, this is constant time, but we have a while loop. Okay, and this one is different from what we've had previously, in which where we have I times I less than n. So while we see while loops as with logarithmic time, this would be different. Okay, in the case that, so n, okay, so we have while I times I, okay, less than n, so that shall be, okay, I believe it would be square root of 2, because I squared less than n. So in order to get I, so that shall be square root of n. Okay, okay. So j equals j plus 1 is constant time, I equals I plus 1 constant time. We could actually group this. So this shall be constant time, okay? Constant time here as well. But the difference here is I times I, which is I squared. And in order to get n, so it's square root of n. Okay. So the loop will terminate based on the value of I. So and iterate based on the condition O squared of n. So this is a special case, okay, for our time complexity, where it became square root of n mainly because of this loop condition for the loop. Lastly, we have, okay, here we have our snippet. So as you would see, it's a combination of for loop, a while loop, and another while loop. Okay, so this one, It's not a special case, just like what we have here, where we have I times I, which became square root of n. Okay. So in this case, so uh, we have right here. So first, we have constant time. So we have C1 times n. So times. So since we multiply it, since the while loop is inside another for loop. Okay. So what we have here is, okay, so our for loop would execute as stated here, n divided by 2 times. Okay, so n divided by 2 is just 1/2, so we would not have any issues with that. Middle loop will also execute right here, n over 2 times, that's 1/2 again. Okay, so we would not be having issues with that. So uh, as for this one, so this is just like the example that we've had previously, where it shall be executing in logarithmic time, mainly because of our condition here. Okay, okay. I forgot to state that this statement should be inside while, and what these statements below while right here should be indented as well. Okay, so this is just a limitation of my code right here. But what would happen is, since this would uh, run n times, okay, n over 2, so this would be represented by n, then another n, okay, so which we could represent, since we have k equals 1, so we could have c2 times n, okay, then multiplied with another while right here. So this is one for the while loop, represents just like what we have had earlier. So constant time for this lines of code multiplied by the shall be log n. Okay. So where the shall be, so as you would see, we could eliminate lower order terms. So where it would become n times log n. So n times n is n squared, okay, multiplied by log n, where it would now be represented as big O n squared log n. Okay. So as you would see, the last examples have a non-normal, okay, so or a time complexity that is not on the table that we've had. Okay. So that is how you get, or mainly that is how you compute for the runtime complexity of algorithms. So I would be giving you exercises, guys. So whether it would be an assignment or during our face-to-face meeting for you to practice on how we compute the runtime complexity of algorithms. And our focus mainly is on the big O notation, or on the worst case runtime of algorithms, and also in this case snippets. So that's all for our meeting, guys. I'll stop the recording.